We get paid based on the value that we bring to the marketplace. Even though, dude, you can get 100 certifications, but if you bring zero value, like that doesn't, just because I have knowledge doesn't translate to mean I'm changing your life.
If completely beginner in their journey of online business, what is your suggestion to them? Like, should they start their 5-day challenges or should they go with the webinar or workshop kind of things?
Don't be afraid to ask. Like, people will literally tell you, like, if you ask them, hey, man, I saw you were part of all 5 days. I really appreciate your enthusiasm. You're a VIP. I noticed you didn't pull the trigger. I'm learning this for the first time, in total transparency. Would you mind telling me, like, what would have made you say yes? And dude, it could be a handful of things.
You might be have a time when you have a huge number of audience, but might be you didn't get any kind of revenue or might didn't get any sales. So at that point of time, like how you or your client keeping yourself in momentum. Hey everyone, welcome to the Entrepreneurs Warrior Show. This is where we interview entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants who are expert in their niche. And today we have one of the incredible guests with us. He is on a mission to help 50,000 speakers and coaches to launch their 5-day challenges by 2025, which is huge mission, right? And he is the author of a book called 5-Day Challenge, and he is a business development engineer at a growing entrepreneur, and he is doing incredible stuff. I had a discussion with him prior to start this recording, and he's really amazing person. So without further ado, let's have Brendan McCauley on the stage. Hey Brendan.
Hey, that's quite the intro, man. I appreciate it, and super excited to be here and drop whatever value we can for all the listeners.
I'm super excited for this podcast because I know it's going to be add insane amount of value to the listeners and to all the people who is watching us. So before we proceed and start, can you share like your backstory? Like how did you started with the journey of online business, and specifically like how did you then once you get about your journey, like how did you I got the idea of starting your 5-day challenges and you make your main business out of like 5-day challenges?
Sure.
So
Yeah,
what's
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then
So long story short, parents got divorced when I was a kid, and basically I turned to binge eating to kind of cope with the pain. So I put on weight all the way through high school, and then you finally get to the point in life where sometimes you say enough is enough, and you make a shift, right? So that shift for me was to start, getting healthy, start eating the right way, and as I began to transform physically, I really started to master myself mentally. And through that transition, part of that mental shift was all about personal development, personal growth. So that's where I became basically in love with, health, wellness, but not just that, also the coaching, the training side. Just how do you become the best version of yourself? That was ultimately the goal. And as I started going down this path, what I found, so there was a, P90X, it's like an at-home workout program. So not sure if you've seen it, but long story short, so they had the opportunity to coach others and to get paid at the same time. So that was kind of like my first taste of entrepreneurship, where I could not only radically change my life, but I could change the lives of others. And I felt a huge sense of fulfillment every single time I would help kind of, take somebody from where they were at to where they want to get to.
yes.
So I got really into like the health and wellness. I did that for a number of years. And one of the things that we used to do was we would run like online virtual events, specifically, boot camps, challenges, for like, push-ups, challenges, squat challenges, things like that. And they worked really, really well. And one of the things that had really helped me when I first, started getting into this whole weight loss thing was we used to go to Weight Watchers. And so for those that are not familiar with Weight Watchers, essentially it's I want to say I think they're like worldwide, but really it's a place where you're able to meet up with a lot of like-minded individuals that are all heading in one very specific direction with the goal of A, obviously, losing weight and staying healthy, but B, you create this community of individuals that hold you accountable on a week-to-week basis. And so fast forward, I was in a normal, corporate job. Wasn't really my personality, but it paid, paid the bills, and you had your 401k.
Yeah.
And I went home to my now fiance, and I said, hey, babe, I want to leave corporate. I want to cash my 401, and I want to play full-time entrepreneur and do what I love. Will you support me?
Yeah.
And she said, can you pay the bills? And I said, well, for 3 months, absolutely. And then we're going to sort of figure it out from there. And that was about 8 years ago this year. And so for the first 4 years, I I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew in some form or fashion I wanted to coach, I wanted to train. So, dude, I tried everything under the sun.
Hmm.
And leading up until that point, I pretty much got like every certification I possibly could, right? So I got like a lot of health and wellness stuff, coaching, training, speaking. I got fitness. I got like the whole thing. I got my MBA, like all of this.
Easy.
And I get all these. Oh, thank you, I appreciate it. So I get all these degrees and I lay them out. I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like, what do I do with all this? And so I'm going to pause for 2 seconds and say, for somebody who's listened to this, they've probably either been in or in the same position where you think that all these certifications magically transform into like clients and business. And I can tell you that is not the
That's
case.
true. No true. Yeah.
Yeah, it is so not the case. So I learned that the hard way. And I did that for about 4 years. And I basically worked as like a 1099 employee where my whole skill set is like systems and back end. I love all the techie stuff and all the automation piece. And I also love training. So what I would do is I'd come in, I'd build systems for companies, I'd get them up and running. And the problem with that was that now it's okay, you finish the job and you're on to the hunt for your next clientele. And I had a lot of friends. So, basically, I'll put it this way. I did this a handful of times and I found myself basically out of work, out of work, out of work.
Hmm.
And after you've done that a handful of times and you have to come home and tell your wife, hey, I don't know how we're going to pay for rent or pay for the bills or whatever else, you get a little tired.
Yeah.
And so I started to look like out in the marketplace and I said, okay, what is, like, let's kind of rethink this. I need to have my own program, my own product. It needs to be scalable. Oh, that was really cool. It needs to be scalable and it needs to be something that people can use with like guaranteed results over and over and over. And so I started looking back at, who do I know? What is the vertical I'm really good at? And if I could just pick one thing and be tremendously good at it, what would that be? And it was my love of coaching, my knowledge of business, my love for systems. And then I looked at what all my friends were struggling with. So a lot of them are coaches, trainers, speakers. They all would say the same thing. They're like, Nilesh, I want to show up to a room full of people. I want to transform lives and I want to get paid well. Like that's it. That's all I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so when I started to look, just out in the marketplace, I was curious to see what other people were doing that did it really well. And if you look at guys like Tony Robbins, Russell Brunson, Brendan Burchard, like all these big names, they
Yes.
were all running challenges. Well, the cool part was that I used to run challenges when I did health and fitness like a number of years ago. I get the tech stuff, and the tech's the biggest thing that holds everybody back from doing it.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, could I be known as the challenge guy, or even just like create a system that I could build it once because I knew the model worked and I
Hmm.
knew I wanted to leverage software. And so roughly about 4 years ago, I started putting this whole thing together and I started playing with it. And now we're actually on our 6th iteration of doing it. And
Wow.
it ended up working out so well that we put an international bestseller called 5 Day Challenge Unlocked.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I said, okay, we're going to go all in on this one thing. And I said, all right, well, now let's go to that next level. And we said, okay, we're going to help 50,000 online entrepreneurs to launch their own event. And let me tell you why. When I was in my corporate job, I
Hmm.
remember staring at the computer screen and I was going crazy, Nilesh. Like I was just like how sometimes you're meant for more. Like you should be doing something else, but you don't know what that is.
Yes.
And the only thing that allowed me to make that jump out of corporate into actually playing entrepreneur was because of the messages that I had heard from other individuals before me that gave me the belief to do it. And
Hmm.
so my thought is that if I can help amazing people that have a message that somebody else needs to hear, and I can give them the platform to be able to do that, then not only can I transform the lives of people that are running these events, but the
Hmm.
ripple effect that those people start to have is really cool and really impactful. So
Huge.
that's why we're doing it.
That's incredible, man. What when you are sharing about your journey, your experience, I had the same thing with me. Coming from being an introvert into corporate, I can feel what you gone through, and really appreciate the effort you put and specifically the mission that you created. Like I wanted to help these people so they can share their message. That's the same thing I
Mm-hmm.
have with me. Like I'm mostly focusing towards helping people to interview podcasts, and that's where I realized like podcast is a platform where people can share their message. So this is where I decided, and I think we have a same vibe with us. Like our end mission is helping people to share their message, which is really, really powerful. And thanks for sharing all the insights and being vulnerable for
Sure.
your story. So you are also helping a lot of people to launching their six-figure challenges and all sort of things related to challenges. So if you can share, like, if a newbie, for suppose completely beginner in their journey of online business, what is your
Mhm.
suggestion to them? Like, should they start their 5 day challenges, or should they go with the workshop? They know their skill, they know their topic, they know their niche, but what is your suggestion to this kind of people? Should they start with the 5 day challenges, or webinar or workshop kind of things?
Sure. So I'm glad you asked, and here's the reason why I love this model so much, and this is
Hmm.
what I tell everybody. For me personally, it doesn't matter if you're brand new, if you're a seasoned veteran, or you're somewhere in between.
Hmm.
I think a challenge is probably one of the most effective ways of getting your message to the masses, so you can create more impact, more influence, and more income. Here's why. If you're brand, and I wish I would have known this when I first left corporate, because this would have made my job so much easier. Because when you're brand new, you're still trying to a lot of times figure out, like, what is your skill set, what is your message, how do you craft an offer that converts, how do you build an email list? There's so many things that you don't even know you don't know.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, what it all comes down to, and this is why it doesn't matter how many certifications you have, it all comes down to, and Jim Rohn said this perfectly, we get paid based on the value that we bring to the marketplace.
Yes.
So, even though, dude, you can get 100 certifications, but if you bring zero value, like, that doesn't, just because I have knowledge doesn't translate to mean I'm changing your life.
So true.
And the beauty, I think, of the 5 day challenge is it's all wrapped around the concept of value, right? So, like, if you look at just the model and the structure itself,
Hmm.
days 1, 2, and 3 is nothing but just straight value. And obviously, it depends on your model and how you do it. But the way that we do it is that it's a free event to come into. You have the opportunity for a VIP experience upgrade if somebody wants, additional tools and time and everything else. But ultimately, it comes from a serve and provide value at the highest level possible. Come day 4, you offer for somebody just by extending your hand, say, hey, if you want to work forward, move forward with me and work with me, this is what it looks like. And on day 5, you wrap it with more value. So, like, Gary Vee even wrote a book, I think it was Hook, Hook, Jab, I believe is
Yeah.
what it was.
Jab, 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 hook. Right
Jab,
hook.
yeah, that's the one, right? Jab, 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 hook. So it's like, okay, jab, jab, jab of value, value, value. Then, hey, would you like to work with me? And then it's even more value on top of that.
Yes.
And so the cool part is that if you're brand new and you're trying to figure out, like, will my thing convert, dude? In 5 days, like, you are going to know really quick, does this have some type of traction, some type of momentum? And when you take an offer and you throw it out there, if people raise their hand and buy, awesome. And if they don't, okay, what did you lose? Like, you only invested 5 hours. Like, it's not like you went on this 3-month marketing campaign and spent 20 grand to be able to do it. And so, like, prime example, when I first launched my own online event, sorry, I don't know why it's shooting off fireworks.
I the
um,
Zoom AI kind of things. It also got
that's
into
funny.
StreamYard. Yeah, that's funny, but yeah,
That's funny.
yeah.
So, like, when I launched my own first event, I did a 5 day automation challenge, right? Because
Okay.
I'm like, hey, let me just test this concept. Let me see if the principle works. So I took maybe a week. I put out one Facebook post. I didn't have a heck of an audience. It was just, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Would you like to join?
Hmm.
And Nilesh, I had maybe 5 people show up consistently. All right. So Monday gave him value. Tuesday gave him value. Wednesday gave him value. And I called my buddy on Wednesday and I was like, dude, I have no idea what I'm going to offer these people. Like, what should I do? And he's like, all right, throw this together, put a price point of, 6K and just see what happens.
Hmm.
And I'm like,
Wow.
okay, because, like, this is all proof of concept, right? So I'm just testing this out. I have no idea if this is going to work. And
Hmm.
up until that point, I had gotten paid for, like, one-off projects, but I'd never done, like, a one-to-group kind of setting. So
Hmm.
Thursday comes in, I provide the value, I throw the pitch out there, we close down. I'm like, we're going to move on to day 5 on Friday. And as soon as the video ends, I go out to walk my dogs. And, dude, I kid you not, within 15 minutes, I look at my phone and it says, Brendan, congratulations, 6 grand just hit your account.
Insane.
Like the first time you ever get that dollar online, it's like,
Yes,
like
I
the
can
mind is
feel it.
like,
Yes.
oh my God, I can't believe it just happened. So when that happened, I was like, okay, my level of belief, Nilesh, like shot through the roof. And I
Hmm.
said, dude, if I can do this, there's
Anyone.
no reason that right. And
Yeah.
to take it one step further, here's probably the biggest challenge I see. So even if somebody is new,
Hmm.
here's why we wanted to make ours different versus any other person that helps someone to launch challenges. There's two pieces that most people miss. That most people, as far as like if you have a challenge program or whatever. A is what I call the offer gap. So
Yeah.
a lot of times, like, right, dude, you could go on right now and say how to run a 5-day challenge, and you will see articles, you'll see videos, you'll see programs, you'll see everything. And one thing, and personally, that I think that they don't include, or at least not as in depth, is how do you craft an offer that really converts? And there's a
Yeah.
much bigger difference between just a one-off program or service versus like a really sexy offer stack that is results oriented. So that's the first piece. The
Hmm.
second piece is the tool gap, and that's the tech piece. Because
Okay.
most people, Nilesh, like if you are going to be a coach or a trainer or a speaker, you're usually really good at what you do, right? Health, wealth, relationships. But it's not necessarily your job to figure out the copy and the landing pages and the automation and the tech. And
Yeah.
because they don't have that, they tend to struggle and they don't launch in the first place.
Hmm.
So when I say that this is totally appropriate for someone either who's a beginner or advanced or somewhere in between, we literally make it to the point where you can just answer a couple of questions and everything is built for you. That's the intent behind it. Because I'm trying to remove all barriers where someone would say, oh, well, I would launch, but I don't know how to write copy. Oh, I would launch, but which tech system should I choose? I would launch, and then it winds up becoming this laundry list of reasons why people don't take action. And if you
Yes.
can remove those, then I can just allow you to step in and be your greatest.
That's awesome, man. And when you are talking about the things which is very important, you just share like offer gap and tool gap. That's very important. Like what people thinking like, okay, I need this tool, I need all of these tools, all of the systems, and only then I'm going to launch. And they become perfectionist at that point of time, and they don't take any kind of action.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool mindset and cool point you just mentioned here, so which is really makes sense. So uh, when people is ready to launch their podcast, according to like you, how they can set the topics for each days, like for day one, what I'm going to teach in my podcast. Suppose let's take an example of podcasting, like, or if you want to take any random example.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the day number one topic? Like, is it regarding mindset? The number two topic, is it regarding something? So how you are teaching your clients, like how they can set up their 5-day content for all 5-day challenges?
Yeah, and I also want to give a huge shout out to Austin Ford because he and I
Ah.
got a chance to collaborate earlier this year, and the dude
Mm,
is brilliant. So a lot of what I have up until today, this being like the
mm,
sixth iteration of it, was a merge. So I just want to give him, huge props because even with like some of his frameworks combined with like my automation pieces, just made it really smooth.
mm.
So Austin, shout out to you, dude. You're awesome at this.
He's
So I
amazing.
adapt. Yeah, yeah. So I got a chance to adapt my strategy to his.
Mm,
So what I always say on day one, it's always got to be the mindset piece, at least in my opinion. The whole concept, and here's a struggle and a challenge that most people tend to face when it comes to launching virtual events is they go very information heavy rather
mm.
than transformation.
Yeah,
And
that's
so if it's just like there's never a lack of information, right? Like you literally can look up anything online, how to do this, how to do this. Sure, I might do it a little bit differently than the next person, but it's still just information that needs to be applied and acted upon. Transformation, like it needs to be a transformative style event because I need a person when they're coming in and they're having an issue. It's
mm,
not a matter of that there's not resources and tools out there that can help them. A lot of times it's the internal belief. And dude, you know this better than anybody. If your head isn't right, I can
mm.
give you all the tools, all the tactics, all the strategies. Like you're never going to bring it across the finish line. I don't
Yeah.
care if it's personal. I don't care if it's professional, whatever. It's always the same thing. So when someone comes in, a lot of times, let's just say it's how to start your own podcast. Well, there's probably a reason that they're struggling, and it's not a matter of, what are the steps. I could go find out the steps if I looked on Google, or shit, if I went to Chat GPT right now, I could find out what the steps are,
That's
right?
everywhere. Yeah.
Exactly. So when they come in, it's sort of like a 5-step phase that they go through. It's like, okay, I don't even know if this is possible, to I can do this, I will do this, I must do this, I'd be crazy not to do this. And in order to achieve that, I need them to believe and think differently leaving the event than they did coming in. So when they first come in, they're probably in a certain type of mindset, like, hey, like podcast could be cool. And by the end of the event, I need them to be saying, man, if I don't do a podcast yesterday, I'm missing the boat. And so a lot of that is how they show up, like why. We're going to teach them the what's and the why during the event. There'll be probably about 20% of the how in there, right? Because I want them to have little technical wins. I want them to know what the niche is by the time they're done. I want them to understand, maybe a couple of the topics they can start with, or what are, some of like the basic tools that will help them get momentum. But it's like, let's just say, for example, I have a podcast agency, and my whole thing is I can show you how to whip up a podcast, no problem. And I can say, guys, here's all the steps, here's how you do it. And I just regurgitate all this information. So it does two things. One, you're just giving them tools and tactics, and you're not giving them the belief system. And number two, and I've seen people do this, is they literally take whatever their offer would have been on the back end. They give them absolutely everything. They flood people with them. So now people have way too much information. And you basically just completely worked yourself out of a job, because now they have no need or desire to want to work with you after. Right? Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that your week is made up of fluff and motivation and things of that nature, but you want to be able to bring in transformational style stories to show belief that this is actually possible. And so the other thing is too, and here's the secret, and this is what Austin kind of helped give me some clarity on, and this is why we do it with ours moving forward. So the first piece is really the mindset piece, and that's your origin story. So let's just say we break it down into 5 days, right? So you have your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So your Monday, and here's the thing too, on any event, on any call, it's setting a very appropriate, solid foundation. So you need to set clear expectations and have clear communication from day one. Here's why you're here. Here's what you're going to get from it. Here's how I expect you to show up. All right. And we want to make sure we're really clear on that piece. And then we're going to dive deep on it. And then first and foremost, just like on any webinar or whatever, I need you to understand that I understand who you are, the struggles that you're going through. And you're essentially on day one, you're going to share that origin story. Once you've done that, when you move into day two, that's where I want to reveal the framework. Like you have a specific framework or system or blueprint. Like you have your own methodology that makes you unique, that makes you special. Yeah. And so like for ours, what we ended up coming up with is the perfect challenge blueprints. I love the fireworks too. It's like, it makes it so much more enhanced.
That's very beautiful.
So it's the perfect challenge blueprint, right? So when we take you through a challenge, like if I were to help you craft a challenge, we have 5 phases you would go through. And I'm going to share these phases, or like if you were to help people create their own podcast, you would have maybe a 5-step podcast framework. And on Tuesday, you share the framework, because think about what it does for your audience. Now your audience says, oh man, there's a framework to success that now Nilesh is showing me how to do, right? Yeah. So they understand, okay, here's the yellow brick road to get me to Emerald City that I just need to walk down this path. So they get the concept and they understand the direction that they need to head. And then over the Wednesday and the Thursday and the Friday, you're essentially going over these pillars that make up your framework. So you're giving them, again, the what and the why and a little bit of the how, and you're breaking that down for them. And then ideally by the end of day 5, they now have a level of belief, they have a level of confidence that if they follow your 5-step framework, using your methodology, taking into consideration all the things that you talked about and the little micro wins, now they feel like they actually are on this trajectory to have success. Yes. And because we're at the end of the event, they have one of 2 options, right? So either they do it by themselves, and God bless them, good luck. You gave them the tools and the structure. Option 2, they can now work with you, and you will help expedite their results, ideally that much faster. And that's the general concept. And that's why it doesn't matter if you're brand new, it doesn't matter if this is the first time you're crafting your offer. If you come from a place, man, of giving, serving, and saying, hey, I want to help you take you from where you are to where you want to get to. This is my structure on how we're going to do it. If you'd like to do it with me faster, this is what it looks like. That's why it's such a effective marketing tool, because you can't hide when it's you on the camera for 5 days, an hour a day in front
Yes.
of an audience. It's like either you know your shit or you don't. Okay. And especially when you go into the VIP session, you have the main session and you have a VIP session. And dude, that's 10 hours of them getting the best of you and understanding, okay, can this individual help me? Do they know what they're talking about or don't they? Now, here's the one caveat I will say. And the way that we set ours up is to help you get clarity on who are you going to serve, how are you going to serve them, what does that look like? So that's part of our phase of helping you to run an event. But we've also done this before where people, they don't take the time to get that clarity, and then you wind up not having the results that you want. Because if people don't, you ever talk to an entrepreneur and they say, oh, well, I do life coaching and I do Reiki and I do this and I do social media posting and I can run your VSL. And dude, I was guilty of that when I first started, because you want to be everything to everybody. But the truth is, if you become one thing with one specific tangible process, with one result, and you get known as the person in that thing, then the second a question comes up of, hey, who's the best person to help me with my podcast? Oh, dude, you got to hit it Nilesh. Like, this guy knows what he's talking about. Here's his results. And the other thing too, when you become focused on one thing, not only is your challenge more effective, it literally allows you to scale. It allows you to have a completely clear message on who you can help and how you can help them. And your ability just to be able to grow in general, because it's, when I go and I serve a client, dude, it's the same thing every single time. It's like, McDonald's can crank out fries and a double Whopper because they're not making 18, like they're not the Cheesecake Factory, right? They don't have 300 things on a menu. It's just very simplistic, and they crank it out over and over and over, and it's the same result, and you just focus on getting it better. So, dude, if you look at, Russell Brunson of
Yeah.
ClickFunnels. So we just went to Funnel Hacking Live, I think it was last year. And one of the things that he said, and he's been talking about this over and over, and he finally revealed it, he's like, guys, I will run a 5-day challenge for every product going forward and every product I've ever done. And if a guy like that, who does as well as he does, says that, in my opinion, like, if you're not doing a challenge when the guy who literally is like the godfather of a lot of this,
Right.
or just does it really, really, really well, you probably should consider running one.
Wow, that's incredible thing. And when you share this thing about Russell Brunson, even my journey began from Russell Brunson only. The podcast thing in my journey come because of the .com secret book that he have.
Yep.
So definitely he, and even like when you share Tony Robbins, Brandon Bouchard, all of these big people are doing, that's definitely a powerful thing. And you did a mic drop here by uh, dropping on how to set up each day's topic. Like day one you can go with that, two you can go with, guys, if you are watching this, you can make a notes. And if you are planning to launch your podcast, launch your challenges, go and implement the system. It is going to be help you like crazy. Thanks for sharing this uh, incredible stuff. So in the journey of doing your 5-day challenges, you share like you are on your first challenge, you have 5 people and you did $6,000. You might be have a time when you have a huge number of audience, but might be you didn't get any kind of revenue, or might your client got any kind of didn't get any sales. So at that point of time, like how you or your client are keeping yourself in momentum, like, okay, this is just another thing that I can work on it, I can improve it. So how you are keeping your mindset at that point of time? Because while we are growing, a mindset like I can do more, I can do more, I can do more. But when there is downfall, we feel like, oh, should I continue with it? Should I don't continue with it? So
Yeah.
does it happen with you, or if it is, so how you are maintaining with it?
Sure. So somebody told me this, what I thought was really interesting. They said, Nilesh, don't get attached to the results.
Wow.
Don't
Yeah,
get
that's
attached to the results, because there's the lead measure and there's the lag measure, right? So the lag measure is what winds up happening at the end of the day, but the lead measure and what you put into it is really where you need to put your effort and attention. And it can be very easy to focus on the end result and be like, well, that's not what I wanted. And we can tend to internalize those things like, oh, I'm stupid, or I knew I had a bad idea, or I'm a bad public presenter. And you can let all that kind of like internalize. And given, yes, there's certain skill sets, obviously, we can always get better at. We can get better at pitching an offer. We can get better at keeping an audience engaged. We can get better at, and that's I think that's half the fun. Trying to figure out what are the areas that you need to get better at, and getting good feedback from people that you know, like, and trust, that will give you honest feedback of like, hey, Brendan, when you hopped on stage, man, like I know your energy, it wasn't there. So next time you need to bring more energy. And this is why it's also a lot of fun, because even if you are new, there might be a lot of things over time that, dude, if you're doing this for the first time, you're going to have goofs, you're going to have hiccups, maybe you don't have certain skill sets. Don't beat yourself up on it. And let's just say you do even get a decent amount of people in there and it doesn't sell. Look at it from a third party point of view to say, okay, like, if I don't attach yourself again to the reaction, but like step out of the picture and look at it as if you were a consultant and it wasn't you that did it. And say, okay, like, how did this person show up, i.e. you, but how did this person show up? What did the audience say? And kind of, what was the reaction? Did they not buy because they weren't interested? Did they not buy because it wasn't the right audience? Was it not the right message to market match? And half that trick, especially as you're trying to go through this, is don't be afraid to ask. Like, people will literally tell you, like, if you ask them, hey, man, I saw you were part of all 5 days. I really appreciate your enthusiasm. You're in VIP. I noticed you didn't pull the trigger. I'm learning this for the first time, in total transparency. Would you mind telling me, like, what would have made you say yes? And dude, it could be a handful of things. It could be, well, truthfully, it didn't hit what my problem was, or maybe it did and money was an issue. Or maybe now is just not the right time because of where they're in their stage of whatever. Maybe you're helping them through, like, I've got someone that just did a relationship boot camp and he just got a client out of it. So he was stoked. Right. And so, with that, dude, if you have a big event, it doesn't convert, don't internalize it. Figure out what are the little things you need to tweak or change, and change maybe one, potentially two at a time. And dude, do this over and over and over again. Man, so I'll put it this way. Like, I drive a stick shift. And if I showed you how I drive a stick shift now to the first time I drove a stick shift, bro, you'd be laughing at me. Like, the first time was horrible.
Yeah.
Like, I stalled so many times. I started going out, and then, like, my car started rolling backwards. Like, I was lucky if I could make it to the gas station without the car, flatlining on me. And now I don't even think about it, right? Same way, when you're driving, dude, you could be shifting, you could be on the phone, you could be checking your Facebook feed at the same time, and you would do it like without a problem. So all I'll say is people tend to quit way before they should. And, they say, oh, like, I don't know if that's too much work, man. I don't know if I could do that. If you're going to play entrepreneur, you need to figure out, you have to get your message out there somewhere. And in my opinion, anything worth doing is worth doing badly at first. And it's probably going to be ugly. But out of all forms of marketing, Nilesh, that you could do, dude, this one is hands down my favorite. And I mean, you provide the most value. Plus, I don't know a heck of a lot of other ones where you could ask for a high ticket offer right out of the gate. I mean, literally, here's the challenge. The shorter your event, the more on point you need to be. So if you only have an hour webinar versus 5-day challenge, like, I have so much more know, like, and trust that I get to build with the audience, and value that I can provide in ways that I can give and serve. And then something to consider too, it doesn't take a large audience in an event like this to have huge results.
Yeah.
And if you price yourself the right way and you provide an offer that provides massive value, I mean, think about this. Even, let's just say we lowball it. Let's say you could get 100 people to register at least for your event. Let's say on average you have about a 30% show up rate, so 30 people actually come in. Dude, even if you're selling at, like, 2%, 3%, if you have an offer that's $10K, dude, your average coach, like I just checked out some of the stats, average coach, I want to say makes between 30 and 40K per year. Per
Wow.
year. Dude, you run one event and you close at least one deal at 10K, you've
That,
done in 5 days what takes a person on average, almost a third of a year to do. So, all I'll say is like, just don't second guess yourself. If you're watching this, you have some type of talent, skill, knowledge, ability that somebody needs to hear right now. And if you are not putting yourself out there because you're worried about how your voice will come out, or that you'll make a mistake, or, that you might look foolish, in my opinion, somebody told me this and it hit me hard. They're like, Brendan, if you don't put your thing out there, you're being selfish more than you care about helping somebody else transform their life.
that's very powerful. Yeah, that's very powerful point. And the last point that what you mentioned is, if you are not sharing, you are becoming very selfish. You feel like I don't want to share because I don't want to sell. The main thing, like people, what they have in their mind, like I don't want to sell because but you are actually becoming selfish to not sharing your stuff. And love this point. Actually, it is very powerful. And you mentioned like people give up very easily. That's very true. And I see a lot of people started their journey with me like 4 years ago. I'm sure you also see a lot of people started with you, and right now only 5%, 1% are with you, continue doing this what they are doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very powerful, that giving up is very easy. But did you have ever thought of give up in your journey? Like, did you ever thought like this, like, okay,
Oh,
this is
plenty.
very hard. Very much hard,
Yeah,
man. Why
plenty,
you get-
plenty. There were, so when you make that decision, when you
Mm,
decide, when you cut off that, hey, I'm not going to do anything else, there have been so many times where I've had buddies that have reached out and said, hey, man, if you want, like, I've got a really close friend of mine who's like, hey, if you want to come sell cars, I'll get you a job tomorrow. And I could
mm,
easily, especially over these 8 years, I easily could have said, all right, that's fine, no problem. I also know I wouldn't be doing what I love. I probably wouldn't be super passionate. I'm sure I could become passionate about it.
yes.
But I knew, like, when you know that you're called towards something else, I'd rather get my ass kicked for
Mm,
8 to 15 years and then see it pay off in the long run than cut and run when things get hard. And dude, if you look at any person that's, crushing it or is an overnight success, they all went through the same thing. And there's always going to be some type of hurdle, struggle, barrier, obstacle, something you have to get over. And if you're not willing to overcome those things, then, let's look at it on the opposite side. Okay, sure, I can be motivated. I can have this desire to want to, change a lot of lives and make a lot of income. But let's say I choose not to go after that and I go 30 years into the future and I look at myself and I say, okay, well, you decided not to try this. And when things got hard, you decided to go back to a 9 to 5, or you decided to, go sell cars because you can make 6 figures per year, but you chose not to chase your dreams. And do nothing against at all to people that, have a 9 to 5 that sell cars or anything. It just wasn't the path I was looking for. And if I want to have financial, there we go again, man. I guess that's like every time I make a cool point, fireworks fall.
yeah, it's kind of
Let's see. Yep, I think that's what it does.
something like this. Yeah.
So, and nothing against anybody that has those, but like for me, if I want financial freedom, if I want financial security, if I want to be able to call my own shots, if I want to feel like, hey, I can choose to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want, which is what I consider success, I knew that it had to be with my own thing where I could, I could bring this to life. And so there's a great book. It's called From Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Yeah,
And
very
have you,
awesome.
yeah. And so, outside of saying you got to make sure you have like the right people on the right bus and the right seats, he's like, there's 3 things that if you want to be obnoxiously successful, that you have to follow. You got to love it, you got to be the best at it, and it's got to make financial sense. And he's like, as long as you cover all 3 of those, then that's what took all these companies that were doing average to all of a sudden hit this hockey stick and go up. And so when I was looking at what I was doing, and for anyone that's watching this right now, if you know that what you are doing is the right thing to do and it hits all 3 of those topics, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And you've probably seen that diagram, right? Where there's like a piece of gold, and you got this one digger that like gives up when he's like this far, and then the other digger that just keeps going, like eventually hits it. And I think a lot of times, if you quit before you should, like you're never gonna know. And I mean, I'll put it this way: I had to, on multiple occasions, approach it with a whatever it takes mentality. And if that means you have to borrow, you have to borrow. If that means, it's going to put you in a really tight position, I've had more of those than I probably care to count. But I can promise you it is well worth it on so many different levels. And what, even from a fulfillment standpoint, to have somebody look at you and say, dude, thank you so much for what you've put together. Like, this has radically transformed my life and gave somebody else belief. If I had stopped, that wouldn't have happened. And so, dude, the fact that like you're doing this podcast and you're getting somebody else's message out there, if you choose to stop after this one, you don't like, we have no idea how many other great podcasts you could have brought out that could have radically transformed somebody else's life. So,
Right.
Thank you for what you do, because you're helping, get this message out. You're transforming a lot of lives at the same time. And I think, we keep doing this together, everybody starts to win.
Appreciate you for your kind word. And that's the definitely a mission I started with. Like, okay, I know what I know, but I wanted to get what more people know more than me. So that's where the mission comes, and I started my podcast journey 2.5 years ago. I really appreciate you for your kind words. So you talk about the giver part, mindset part, everything. Can you share like what kind of tools are required to launch their 5-day challenges? Like is it on virtual, it's a Zoom, then what kind of email service provider they can go with, or funnels? Like what kind of tools are basically required to launch or set up a 5-day challenge?
Sure. So let me share just the overall framework, and then I'll share kind of like how you would start to implement it.
Yeah.
So the 5 phases that we have whenever we build this with somebody. So the first one is plan. So we need to be hyper clear, like I said before, right? So we need to know who we're going to serve, how are we going to serve them, what is the price point, what does that look like, who's the ideal avatar. Once we plan it and we're clear on that, then we go into the build phase. So I've seen, challenges as simple as, a one-page lander, with like maybe a Google sheet. I've seen some people that go like completely in depth. I'm a little bit biased on our platform because, ours is just a one-stop shop that is designed for challenges specifically, but then B, also allows you to leverage a whole bunch of other tools and systems at the same time. And it's all under one roof, which makes it really, really, really easy. So, I won't get into the technical weeds of like, hey, try this one, try this one, try this one. I would recommend ours all damn day. At the end of the day, man, it doesn't really matter which tool you use. There's some tools that, yes, in my opinion, because dude, I've tried probably every tool under the sun you could possibly imagine, and some do a much better job than others, 100%. Tools will always change. New email, servers and providers, everything will always present themselves. So, all I can say is that the one that we like to provide, I try and make this as simple, clear cut as possible. After you build it, then the other pieces that are going to be critical to, even once you've got the technical piece up and running, at bare minimum, here's what I would say. You need at least some type of landing page to be able to capture emails. Some type of email reply that says, hey, congratulations, here's the details. Probably just a confirmation page, and at bare minimum, a Zoom to be able to go live on. And if you can at least have some sort of landing page with an email confirmation and a Zoom that reminds them, hey, hop on Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern, then you're good. If you're going to start like really low budget, not quite sure what to do, at least start with that.
Wow.
So you plan it, build it, and then we have fill. So how are you going to fill it? Dude, This is the first conversation I have with everybody. I know our system works. I could literally say, hey, Nilesh, I'm going to get your challenge up and running in 2 days. You're good to roll. That's not the important part. The important part is how do you get butts in seats? Like if you can't drive people to an event in some form or fashion, you're going to be talking to a room full of crickets or a bunch of meeting recorders.
So true.
And
Yes.
like that does no good for anybody, right? That's like you saying you're going to run a podcast, have all these people to interview, and then you got no one to interview. Like it doesn't work. So there's a lot of different ways to be able to go about that. I'll address that in a second. So we have to fill it, then we have to host it. So you want to make sure that as you're actually hosting your events, that you create excitement, engagement, and enthusiasm. Like, we want to make sure that if people are going to spend 5 hours with you, even if you have all the tech and everything set up, I've got people that give the most boring presentation in the world. Dude, you're asleep 10 minutes into it and you're like, I'm not spending 5 hours here with this individual.
Right.
So, and sometimes we even recommend bringing in an MC to help run the event, because that's their thing, is to give you lended credibility and just to keep the movement going. And dude, if you get the movement right, an hour goes by tremendously quick. And then the last one is the sell. Like, so how do you actually, how do you naturally ascend people into wanting to work with you? If you're open to it, if you guys would find that helpful, for your audience, I'm happy to give everyone a free copy of it.
Oh.
So, we do normally charge for it, but, because you have us on this podcast and I'm sure people want to learn how to do it, everything I'm telling you, I literally walk you through the book from start to finish. It also has an audio book with it, and that comes with it. And then we give you a whole bunch of other tools and, stuff like that, just in terms of to help them set it up. So I don't know if you're cool with that, but if so, I'd be happy to grant it to your audience.
Yeah, definitely. It would be great if you can share. Guys, here's a special gift from Brendan for all of you. Awesome, awesome. Thank you for giving this. So I'm going to share the link below the chat. So, I would love to talk with you on and on this podcast, but time have its own limit. So before we wrap up the podcast, you already give more about share more about your books, but can you give more idea like what is inside it? I know you already shared, but a little bit glimpse more, and where do people can find more about you and about everything what you do?
Yeah. So, I think it'll probably be the best one. So we have a podcast that I had started a while ago, and I was very fortunate. I've actually partnered with a couple of guys, and now we literally have a podcast studio on the other side of where I'm sitting. So what we're going to be doing is the podcast is called Growing Entrepreneur. We also have a Facebook group called Growing Entrepreneur, and the idea is to touch on topics, everything entrepreneurial wise. Especially, I think it's just tremendously helpful. And the reason I call it Growing Entrepreneur is because there's always a new level for every person, regardless of where you're at, right? If you're a beginner, you're trying to, get to that next piece. If you've been doing this for a while, okay, what's maybe a tip or a tool or strategy, something I haven't used yet? And we'll talk about the challenges and how to implement this and the marketing pieces and the tools and the technology. And we'll be doing interviews like you're doing. We'll be doing one-offs as well. So I think that'll probably be the most helpful, because we're going to keep cranking out content. And then as we start to get feedback and questions from individuals, like, those are topics that we really want to hit on. So you guys can expect to see a lot more of that on a continuous basis. I literally just put a post on it the other day saying, hey guys, check us out. This is going to be coming. So it's going to be a lot of fun. If they go to official Brendan M, that's all my social media channels. So that'll probably be the easiest way just to kind of stay up to date with what's happening. And dude, anytime that we get some feedback, we're happy to, touch on it and just go all in on a topic and have a conversation just like this to present and provide more value.
Amazing, amazing. Appreciate you for sharing everything. And once again, thank you for being here on the Entrepreneurs Warrior Show and sharing all the strategies, all the ideas and nuggets with us and with our listeners. I really appreciate you for that. Thanks a lot for your time and the effort. So thank you so much, guys, for listening this podcast till now. And before we wrap up, I wanted to share this one thing with you. What is the one action you are going to take from this podcast? Don't just listen and go and listen another one. Instead of think like how you are going to implement what you just listen. Like, you are going to launch a 5-day challenge, you are going to launch setting up offer for your 5-day challenge whatsoever, but make sure you take some kind of action step instead of just listening this podcast and then another podcast. So that's the thing. Thank you so much, and share your love to Brandon. Thanks a lot, Brandon. I hope you had a great time with me.
Yeah, man, that was a blast. And guys, appreciate it. Thank you so much. Nilesh, you're the man.
Amazing. Awesome.